Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank y'all for joining me again today for the eighth and final reading from Sermon on the Mount by Emmet Fox. Seems as though these 8 weeks went quick, didn't they? Felt very, very fast. So, it's been a great experience. It's been a great benefit to me to be able to go through the Sermon on the Mount again, the beatitude specifically, and just really get the wisdom back out of it. You read it at certain points in your life, right? You read certain books at certain points, and they have an amazing impact. And then you read them again, and you get a whole new perspective and understanding, and they have a whole different impact on you. So it's really cool. So I'm excited to read this one again. Thank you everyone that joins in and watches the YouTube videos, watches the podcast on Spotify, listens to it on Apple Music, and likes and subscribes to the page. Really think it's a great thing to get the support. I appreciate it very much. And thank y'all for listening in, and look forward to any feedback that y'all give me as always. So, but let's get right into it. We're going to be doing the 8th beatitude, which is quite a section, actually. I'm going to read that just real quick. The blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. For righteousness' sake. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil things against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. So that's the last beatitude, which is the whole summation of that point in the actual Bible, or just it's the conclusion to the beatitude portion in the Bible. Then I believe the next part is as a man thinketh, which is where James Allen got the title and the inspiration for the first book that we did on here. So it was very, very interesting. And he actually has an as a man thinketh portion here. But I don't believe we're going to be getting into that next. So, but let's go ahead. We'll finish up the beatitude part, and we'll go from there. So here we go. This is the full reading of the 8th beatitude from Emmet Fox's book, Sermon on the Mount, which is located in chapter 2. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. In view of what we know about the essential character of the teaching of Jesus, that the will of God for us is harmony, peace, and joy, and that these things are to be attained by cultivating right thoughts or righteousness. This is a very startling statement, referring to what we just read, the beatitude portion. Jesus tells us again and again that it is our Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom, and that the way in which we are to receive it is by cultivating serenity or peace of soul. He says that the peacemakers who do this, praying in meekness, shall obtain prosperity, inherit the earth, and have their mourning turned into joy, and that, in fact, whatever they shall ask the Father in the manner of this teaching, that he will do. Yet, here we are told it is blessed to be persecuted as the result of our right thinking, or righteousness. For that by this means we shall triumph. That is cause for rejoicing and gladness to be reviled and accused, and that the prophets and great illumined ones suffered these things too. All this is indeed very startling, and it is perfectly correct. Only we have to understand that the source of all this persecution is none other than our own selves. No outside persecutor, but only our own lower selves. When we find righteousness or right thinking very difficult, when we are very strongly tempted to hold the wrong thoughts about some situation or some person or about ourselves, to give way to fear or anger or despondency, then we are being persecuted for righteousness' sake. And this is for us an extremely fortunate or blessed condition, for it is in such moments that we are really advancing. Every spiritual treatment or scientific prayer involves a tussle with our own lower self, which wishes to indulge in the old habit of thought and, in fact, persecutes and reviles us. If we like to put the thing dramatically in the Oriental way, all the great prophets and enlightened ones of the race who ultimately overcame did so by just such struggles with themselves when they were being persecuted by either their own lower natures or the old Adam. Jesus himself was tempted in all respects like as we are, and to meet this persecution more than once, especially in the Garden of Gethsemane, and for a few moments on the cross itself. Now, since these combats with the lower self have to be fought out sooner or later, then the sooner that they are over and done with, the better. And so, relatively speaking, they are great blessings. Note carefully that there is no virtue or advantage whatever in being persecuted or annoyed by other people. Nothing can come into our experience unless it finds something in us which it is attuned. And so, to have trouble and difficulty is only a sign that our own mentality needs clearing up. For what you see at any time is nothing but your own concept. There is at this point a grave danger for weak or vain or self-righteous people, because others do not treat them just as they would like to be treated, because they do not get consideration that they probably do not deserve. They are often inclined to claim that they are being persecuted on account of their spiritual superiority, and to give themselves absurd airs on this ground. This is a pathetic fallacy. In consequence of the great law of life, of which the whole Sermon on the Mount is an exposition, we can get only what belongs to us at any time, and nobody can prevent our getting that. And so all persecution and hindrance are absolutely from within. Despite the sentimental tradition which clings about it, there is no virtue in martyrdom. Did the martyr but possess a sufficient understanding of truth, it would not be necessary for him to undergo that experience. Jesus was not a martyr. He could have saved himself at any time had he wished to avoid the crucifixion. It was necessary that someone should triumph over death, having actually died, to make that demonstration possible for us. But he deliberately chose to do a certain work for us in his own way, and was not martyred. We must not in any way depreciate the splendid courage and devotion and heroic self-sacrifice of the martyrs of all ages, but we have to see that their understanding was incomplete, or they would not have been martyred. If you fix your attention on martyrdom, regarding it, as so many did, as your highest good, you will, as with anything on which you fix your attention, tend to bring it to yourself. While we may well envy them the moral and spiritual heights which they did attain, we know that had the martyrs loved their enemies sufficiently, loved them, that is to say, in the scientific sense of knowing that truth about them, then the Roman persecutor, even Nero himself, would have opened the doors of their prison, and the fanatic of the Inquisition would have come to reconsider his cause. There's a lot in there, isn't there? There's a whole lot in there. Especially that last part's quite intriguing. The talk about martyrdom and giving a different, saying that Jesus was not a martyr. He had a purpose to fulfill. There was a reason that he was going through what he was doing so he could actually rise from the dead. Which is very interesting to think about it that way. Right? Very interesting to think about martyrs as a incomplete understanding of what love is. So, might ruffle a couple of feathers for those that just heard that, but that's okay. We're all learning, right? If you take something personal, because it resonates with something in you. That's what we just read. Actually, I liked that part. But I like how he opened up the whole thing saying, all we've talked about is great stuff so far. You know, meek shall inherit the earth and all these, you know, those who mourn will be comforted, and, you know, theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and peacemakers, and all these things. All these great things. All these beautiful rewards of practicing a godly and righteous. I like how he used that word twice. He used it in quotes, but I don't think to mock it, but to reference it as that's what righteousness is. A godlike, Christ-like life. Right living, right actions. And but we've learned about all this in the Beatitudes, and then we get to this part. It talks about persecution and all of these things, and he says that's good. God says that's good. For theirs is the king, which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Because we go through that refinement process. I love that part. So, but yeah, he talks about how it's kind of contradictory. We get these things, and we get this persecution now, and we get this condemnation, it seems like. And it seems, when you read it, it's like, well, I don't know, right? But then he puts it in the, I'll say, the correct perspective, right-minded thinking, that the only true, this is true, all these things are true, but the only true persecutor is ourselves. And not just ourselves, but our lower natures, our selfish, our self-centered, self-serving selves that we are outgrowing, that we are purifying away from, that we are intending to change from. That's who we're persecuted from. Right? It's that persecution happens every time we get the opportunity to make a different decision, and it's difficult for us to make a different decision. When we get the opportunity to change a behavior, to take a different action, we take a different behavior. And we don't want to, and we have all of our usual excuses involved, and we have all of these things that we used to tell ourselves, and now we're given this opportunity to change. Right? When we're tempted to hold, he said, this was a relatively direct quote, when we're tempted to hold on to the old thoughts and behaviors or ideas and actions, I forget which one specifically he said, but when we're tempted to hold on to these old thoughts and behaviors, this is being persecuted for righteousness's sake. So it's actually a possessive sounding righteousness. So we get pursued because we are trying to make a better decision, a righteous decision. And our old living, our old thinking, our old way of behaving does not like that. So we get that inner conflict within ourselves, in our own hearts and minds, because there's part of us that still wants to do whatever the hell we want to do. And then there's the part of us that's trying to grow and change and live a different life in service to the God of our understanding, to live righteously. So this is the growth points. These are the uncomfortable times. These are the new behaviors that we institute. These are the new ideals that we institute. These are the new paths we're walking, that the steps aren't always even. The steps aren't always forward, actually. But we're taking it. These are these growth points when we're persecuted, when we cause ourselves some inner turmoil because our old ways and our new ways, they don't match up. There's a distinct difference in what we're doing here, right? We're trying to be over here, holding on to everything, but then turn over this new leaf, have this new outlook on life, make these new decisions. That's the persecution for righteousness' sake he's talking about. And every time we struggle with these things, we're moving one small step closer to the ideal. The ideal that we hold, whatever that looks like for you. And if you don't have one, I suggest you write one down. You make one. Just a list of values and principles that the ideal person should live by, and then embody those. For me, that's a crucial part of my spiritual growth, is what am I aiming at? Because without an aim, you don't know if you're making progress. So for a lot of people, they choose Jesus Christ as the ideal that they're aiming for, to have godlike character. I think that principle is called theosis, to become more like Christ, to become like Christ, actually, right? And to actually have these, to outgrow our old behaviors, to spiritually outgrow our old thinkings and perspectives. And the first thing is to change behavior. And that's part of this. When I was doing my first year of this podcast with James Allen, and I was doing a daily reading every day, there was multiple times where we talked about a purification process. And this is the start of that purification process, when we take a different physical action, despite our history, our previous desires, or our inner thought life. That's what I was looking for. Despite what we think, we're going to take different actions this time, and then we're going to see the thinking behind it, because the actions changed. So we'll see the thinking that's prompting the action. So we can change the thinking, and then we can change the heart and who we're serving with these things, right? That is what I'm talking about with this, right? That is that purification process. I do like how he throws in there that, remember, no one else's words can hurt you, right? Like no one else. No, the persecution from others is not what we're looking for here. That should not be your intention, right? And the only time we can feel actually persecuted is when we have a problem going on with us, right? So if someone's words resonate with us, that's an us problem. That's a me problem, turns out, right? Let me read it real quick here. Note carefully that there is no virtue or advantage whatever in being persecuted or annoyed by other people. Nothing can come into our experiences unless it finds something in us which it is attuned. And so, to have trouble and difficulty is only a sign that our own mentality needs clearing up. For what you see at any time is nothing but your own concept, right? So if we're letting other people's words and other people's actions actually affect us, it's because we got something going on in our own hearts, in our own souls, in our own mind. We need to take a look at that. Because if that wasn't true, it would all just roll off of our shoulders. It would be forgotten about as quickly as it was said. So when we feel troubled, it means we have to fix something in our own mind, right? So this next part, the next thing he talks about is person. There's risk here, right? And the self-righteousness. Whew. This is a hard one to really talk about sometimes because it puts a lot of people in the wrong headspace, I think. But a lot of people like to claim their spirituality and their virtue as why they are persecuted. And I don't believe that's necessarily true. I believe people, what he talks about here is people don't get treated the way they believe they should be treated. So then they have a problem and think they're being persecuted and outcast, right? Well, you get your reactions are to your own beliefs and interpretation of those events, right? So what you're receiving as what you are interpreting as what you're receiving is truly only because of where your mindset is. And yet, honestly, he goes on to say that we get exactly what is within us, right? So our arrogance and our anger and frustration with being mistreated or treated poorly for one reason or another, and then we delude ourselves because it's I'm such an advanced thinker spiritually or even socially. There's a lot of this socially going around, right? We take our good qualities or potentially good qualities and we use them as the reason we're getting outcast. And the reason that's not it at all. It's because our ego is still showing up. We're still being selfish and we're still being self-serving, and we're not actually. There's no honest practice of humility in our lives at all. So it's just something to remember, and it's something to keep in mind as we progress throughout this whole thing, right? Like the only things that affect you are the things you let in, and those are the troubles we get to grow through, and those are actually the blessings we get in this life, right? Those are the things that allow us to get closer to the God of our understanding. It's been my experience. And then for this last part, yeah, it brought up martyrdom. Now it's unnecessary, and he doesn't want to insult the people of that have gone before and were martyrs, right? But he says very clearly that that wasn't necessary. It wouldn't be necessary if they truly understood what love was. And I love how he actually brings in Jesus then, because a lot of people would interpret Jesus dying on the cross as being a martyr, but he said no, Jesus wasn't a martyr. He had a goal to fulfill of showing that promise and showing that the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of God to raise him back from the dead. It was a goal to show that he wasn't a martyr for the sake of being a martyr. It was an intentional action for what needed to happen. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't an argument. It was simply just, this is what must happen. So it's interesting. And he alluded again towards the end of it that whatever you fix your attention on, you will get. He was talking about it to the martyrs, but if you're looking to be persecuted as a martyr, that's what you're focused on, you'll come across that. remember that. So it is, remember, martyrdom is unnecessary when true love is found and true love is understood. There's a right thinking about it. So, well, that was a little bit shorter today. It was actually quite a short reading. But I absolutely love that one. I just love this process of spirituality. I love this process of spiritual growth and everything that goes along with it. I think it's that's the real journey, isn't it? It's the enjoyment of the journey that you're on in this immediate moment and these little pain points of growth that we get to stumble into every single day. Because there's not a day that goes by, at least not in my experience, that I don't get an opportunity to change a behavior, that I don't get an opportunity to change a thought, to change a perspective, an opportunity to break an old idea, as they say, or change an old behavior. I say that to certain people, and they say, "Well, it's not an old behavior still happening, is it?" And I was, they're technically right, but that's one of the things that grates on me. So it's a long-standing behavior, maybe is a better way to say it. So, fantastic reading for the day. Thank you all for joining me again. So, I guess we're going to be going on to the new book, and I've given it some thought, and this isn't necessarily as popular of a book as the other two I just read. This one comes from somebody that found his sobriety, I believe, in the Oxford group and then Alcoholics Anonymous. We'll go through it again together. This is it's got 18 chapters, I believe. We're going to do each one of them. 18 chapters. So this will be at least 18 weeks for us. I love the title. And this was one of my more recent reads. And it gave me a lot of insight and wisdom. And the book we're going to be going through, let me see, is I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. Hold on, let's put this in front of my face so it focuses on it. There we go. It's not an original, but this was, let me look. I think it's a fourth printing or something of that nature. It's pretty early on. I got a pretty, this one was printed in 1934, but I think the original copyright date was 31. Hold on, let me look that up for you guys. Let me see. Come on. And it's just fantastic, just the perspectives that he goes through. To tell us about how he was placing all these false gods ahead of his actual sobriety, or ahead of his living, ahead of God himself, right? So I think it was the Oxford group he was actually in. So, I have a 34 edition. So this is actually first edition. I believe I got a first edition on my hands. They're quite expensive though, so though the signed ones are, but you can get one for about $20 or $30. They are not that expensive. But you can also get a new printing of it called Believing in False Gods. I Was a Pagan. It's a facsimile reprint, and it's fantastic. Actually, I've got a copy of that as well as one of the originals here. So. Don't hesitate to get that one either and follow along. It's pretty accurate to the original. I didn't find any misprintings actually. But if we find some, if you follow me along, let me know. So I am I've got to do some planning as to how I'm going to present this. Because it's the chapters aren't very, very long, but they aren't necessarily the quickest either. So what I might do is do a reading. I might do it similarly to As a Man Thinketh, but I might do them in 1 week segments. So I'll do like a reading on Wednesday just to put the actual reading of the book out there for people to listen to that don't have the means to buy it or don't have a desire to buy it, but you can actually listen to what I'll be going over, and then I'll be over the weekend posting the actual review of the chapter. So again, it's I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. I'm very excited to go through this book again. I've read it twice. Once cover to cover, second time in piecemeal and different pieces here and there. So I'll say a full 2 times, but only once cover to cover. So going through it again, very exciting stuff for me. And you get to come right along with me. So I appreciate everybody that's jumped on and given me the opportunity to share from Sermon on the Mount of Emmet Fox's with y'all. And I will be back again. I'm not sure if it'll be next week or the week following with the new material. So until next time, thanks.